Welcome to Speak Sex. I'm your host, Eurydice, and today's guest is a very dear friend as well as amazing woman that I want to introduce to my listeners, Kathryn Mikesell. Welcome to the show, Kathryn.
Thank you. It's so lovely to be here. I'm so nervous, but you know that I adore you. So,
Yeah, it's mutual. It's
really
mutual. And I hope that it comes through during our conversation because we have known each other for a long time and we've been there during some milestones in each other's lives. And and Kathryn, is like a lighthouse human. It's not a term I use often, but Kathryn does bring light, to everything she does and everywhere she goes. And there is such an openness and love and humanity that just, comes out of, literally like every moment of her day. So I think that, as, for me as a feminist, as well as, kind of like a conscious woman artist, I feel that, I want to share the abundance of who you are, this kind of like openness, because I think that's how humanity can like kind of like move forward, by like embracing all that's good and not focusing on all that's maybe not so good.
and all the feminine components of that, I mean, like compassion and love and beauty and vulnerability that have always, too often been seen as what's the word I'm looking for? Not negative, but oh my gosh, I can't think of the word I'm thinking of. But they're not. Have been seen as weaknesses.
Exactly. That have been devalued. Yeah, I think that's yeah. So first, on the official introduction, Kathryn is the co-founder and executive director of Fountainhead Arts Residency and Studios here in Miami. Fountainhead is a nonprofit that has brought to Miami over 420 artists, which is kind of an extraordinary number of people who come and stay for a month in the residency, 3 at a time, and can live there for free, work for free, right? And part of the experience is facilitating a conversation among artists and a kind of like intellectual exchange as well as a friendship exchange. So she does the open studios, right? So every month there's an open studio, so members of the community can go and see these visiting artists. And of course, she has an incredible art collection. And there are also the local studios that Fountainhead manages, and there are like about 30 artists at a time, local Miami artists in the studios. I had one of those for a number of years and loved it. I was blessed too. So, but also, Kathryn is a mother of 2 amazing children and a great neighbor. I met her because I ended up moving into her home. So I bought her previous home. And, that relationship doesn't sound as close as it is, but it is, because like she had completely rebuilt that house with so much love, and it was kind of an art project for her. So my living in it was kind of an close relationship. It was a close experience, I feel. And then our children grew up together because she stayed in the neighborhood. So speaking of like the devaluing of women, I feel that our being mothers has been really important to us and has made a lot of our choices. It has kind of like governed our choices. We would have followed different career paths if it weren't for our children, right? So I think that it's important to put it first, even though when we introduce ourselves in the world, we have to say everything else we've ever done. and it's the most time-consuming labor in a woman's life, I feel. but nevertheless, it gets the least respect, because it's taken for granted. Like, you just do it for free. And so what else do you do, like, for real?
But it's also, I mean, this being a mom, it's also like the most and I have an extraordinarily rewarding job, but nothing compares to raising children. Like, it's, from a heart perspective, you're not paid for it, like you said, and it may not be respected on the outside, but on the inside.
Yeah, I agree completely.
So much. I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Truth. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
I wanna start this interview, my love, by asking you about your moment of change. And I know it wasn't a moment; it's never a moment. It's a series of events. But I know that you were working in the business world, in the corporate world, and then you kind of created this job of yours out of thin air. You kind of manifested it, and then you created it and made it happen. And I think that's just it's inspiring. I feel for a lot of our listeners that we can do that, and take that relative risk and be creative in how we wanna have a life, what we want to do with our lives outside the home. But I'm curious as to what led you to it, and how did you see it all together, or was it one thing leading to another?
No, definitely did not see it all together. My life has just always been. My life has just always been a flow in a way that has involved a lot of, I guess, risk taking, but at the same time, it didn't seem risky because I was literally just like following what was put in front of me in some ways. And I know that, part of that is, manifesting what you want as well, but it's also being open to see, and to kind of follow those little nudges that the universe and your family and your friends are giving you. I mean, I grew up in, a lot of worlds where, women were not, were not necessarily, didn't play primary roles, but I was always lucky enough to make my way in. I started as a kid in the car business, and, very interesting. And then I got my first tech job from from a gentleman that I sold a car to, and then because I knew that was a business I didn't want to stay in. Although I was very blessed that I worked for a family-owned business, and I learned so much, and I actually really treasure those years, because I think that that being in that business and being in a position where literally everybody coming to see you kind of hates you. Like, nobody likes car salespeople. Like, it's, and I feel like that's, I never understood that. Like, I couldn't accept the fact that people would like judge me and not like me before they even said hello. And so I think it helped. I don't know. It just helped me to be more open and learn more about people, and to make sure that I was accepting people as they were also accepting me in some ways, and not being like, not judging either way. I don't know how it's very.
Well, I think it helped you to not take things personally, also, which for us women it's kind of hard, because if you're a car salesman, you can't take it personally. It's the position and not you, right?
No, I still wear my heart on my sleeve. I don't think it changed that. And frankly, you know what? I wouldn't want to change that about myself. I don't know. I'm an emotional person. I get hurt very easily, but it also allows me to feel very easily, and to relate. So, No, it really didn't give me a 6. But it enabled me. It taught me how to build relationships. Yeah, it really taught me how to build relationships, and then in a weird way, I like stayed in touch and had relationships with people that I sold cars to. Like I still have people. We're talking 30 years later that will call me, that I will put in touch with this dealership back in Virginia.
Wow.
Because I think when you're open, you get to know the people and you stay in touch with people.
Yeah.
Because there's some connection.
Yeah.
It's like us. Like how many people like stay in touch and fall in love with the person that bought their house?
I know.
And it was immediate.
Yeah.
It was like,
yeah, that was it.
Buying my house. But when am I going to see you next?
I know. That was it. Yeah. And it doesn't matter. And I think it's just a gift, it's a gift, that it doesn't matter how much time passes, to me, you're in my heart, that's it. It's good to go.
Right, exactly. Like, Mary and I talked, if you call me tomorrow, I'm like, Kathryn, I need you to be here, and I need you to do this and that, and the other thing, I'm like, okay.
Okay, yeah,
same. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, when I ask myself, like, why do we do what we do? Like, this is why. So beautiful, yeah.
For me, it's all about the people. Like, everything I do is about people. Like, that's the beauty of the world that we live in, is that we're all different. We all have completely different things to share and to offer to one another and to teach one another and to open our eyes to something that we would have never seen, whether it's slowing down to watch the beauty of a butterfly, flap its wings, or a hummingbird drinking nectar, or things that are more challenging, to look at, or conversations that, that shape you. It's people that cause that cause you to be open enough to take that next step. It all comes down to people and relationships.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I agree. Yeah. And this is all we're talking about, by the way. It's like people and relationships and how to be open and how to, kind of like undo our programming that we had nothing to do with, that was passed on to us by our, parents, grandparents, ancestors who lived in a different century in different conditions. They were just doing their best, but...
and frankly, we're all doing our best, and our kids are going to be doing totally different things than what we're doing, and that's great. Like, we all have to grow and evolve and be ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay?
Together.
I get back because I totally sidetracked this, but I should get from there.
So you were selling cars.
Yeah, and I was I went into technology, and I started off in hardware, I went into software, I went into services in the tech field. I eventually, I actually, interestingly enough, I was, when Galt was born, it was when Galt was born, that one of the industry, the CLEC industry, which is a competitive local exchange carrier, that industry fell, and that's the technology that I was in. And basically, like one month after Galt was born, I was told you better come back to work, or you're not going to have a job to come back to, even though you're supposed to be granted 3 months. So I remember going back. I had to go to a conference in Toronto, and actually my father-in-law came because he had recently retired, and he came and took care of Galt during the conference, and I would come down and breastfeed him, and then I'd go back to the conference, and Dad would walk him around, and then I'd come back and breastfeed him. It was the craziest thing, and I just remember because Galt just never slept. he's still, actually he sleeps better now at 19, but he just never slept. So my father-in-law, David, was like, oh my gosh, how do you do this? I'm like, I don't know. You just do. Like, you don't even, I don't know, you're a zombie part of the time, but you just do. Like, as a mom.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah, you just do it. Yeah. Yeah.
you figure it out.
Yeah.
So,
When you're called to do it, you do it.
you do it.
Yeah.
You do it. And then I went back, and actually later, my company was like, this is a time when a lot of software companies were kind of being bought and sold. And I ended up at another company, and then another crash happened. And I was pregnant with Sky, and I was let go because I was pregnant. And the president of my division actually called me and said, you should sue, because you were let go because you were pregnant, because we had to bring a guy back from London. We don't have a job for him. We were in the same roles, and well, you're getting ready to go off on maternity leave, and we can't afford that. And it was a tough decision to make, but for me, life has never been about the money, and I said, I very much appreciate you saying that, but I'm not taking that road. Like, I'm not gonna spend the first year of my I didn't know it was gonna be my daughter, but my daughter's life in a lawsuit.
Yeah, fighting and being in anger and depositions and
yeah, that has such tremendous negative energy. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna figure this out. I'll just on to the next thing. That's chapter closed. Now I got to figure out the next one. And then I went in and I started buying real estate, and that was interesting. It was lucrative, but I realized we talk about fiction, and we talk about not like feeling like I feel everything. So we had apartment buildings, and like anytime it rained, I would be worried that, is the roof leaking? Is everything okay? If somebody's toilet got stopped up, I'd say, oh my gosh, their toilet, I gotta get over there and fix it right now. Like I felt like they were my children, So I realized that as it was lucrative, it was not the business for me, because I cared too much. And I was like, well, get a management company. I'm like, no, I'm still going to care. Like, not going to work for me. Scratch that one off the list. And then Fountainhead came from, it started in 2008, in March of 2008.
oh, I remember, my love. I think everybody has a 2008 story, but yeah. That was brilliant. That was like, that's your gift. I'm just going to like take a moment. Like, that's what we're talking about, how, you have like a relationship with flow. I call it flow. It's like kind of like flow through life, without, getting too stuck or overthinking or, thinking too much about the potential outcome of every possible choice, right? And kind of getting stuck at the crossroads, and then life moves on and you're still trying to make it. So in a sense, you kind of flow. So when '08 happened and all of our property values like crashed in Miami, and our stock portfolios and people's retirement plans and savings and whatever, you kind of managed somehow to turn that into the realization of like a dream, where you brought like all of your gifts together and made something so beautiful and so sustainable that you continue to like nourish now all these years later. So yeah, '08 is important because of that, because it was that moment.
We're in a challenging time right now. So I'm at a point where I'm also now trying to figure all that out.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Because back then, when we started Fountainhead, it was two parts, right? We wanted to support artists, and we wanted to give back to our community. And again, it all came down to people, right? We wanted to be able to make these connections that would be valuable for both the artists and our community, whether they were, like business and financial connections, or even more importantly, just personal connections that have the potential to change someone's life, even in a subtle way. I'm not saying that, we're changing lives, but we're
well, I feel that you're definitely changing and enriching the life of the community, for sure. So it's not necessarily one person's life, but
Right.
definitely the community. Mm-hmm. But what I don't know if I remember it right, but like my impression of it, and that's what I mean by turning something that looks like an obstacle into an opportunity, was that, you had bought the house to, I think, fix it and sell it, I assume. And then the market changed. And you were like, okay, I'm just going to change like our vision for the house. So it's going to be a non-profit instead of, a for-profit, basically. Like its value is not what we thought. So we make a different kind of value out of it. So I think that's like a little bit, the sense of taking life at its best, like finding where the opening is.
Yeah. Well, I think we didn't actually buy the house we actually bought the house thinking that later for our parents, right? And then we've been talking about this idea for a residency, but we didn't, we'd never done anything like it. And so, when everything happened, I was just like, you know what? Forget about renting the house. That residency thing we've been talking about, that's what we're going to do. And thankfully, Dan and I had the income that we started. It didn't become a nonprofit until 2018, 10 years later.
Yeah.
We funded it for the first, we funded everything about it for the first 10 years.
Yeah, true.
And it started, everybody's like, we need to turn it into a nonprofit. You need at least the tax write-off. I'm like, I don't have time for that. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
We just wanted to do what we wanted to do, right? But we also started it, like it's dynamic. So Dan and I were both, we sold the children's center and I went back into tech. And Dan and I were both traveling. He was traveling a ton at that time. He was working in Brazil, if you remember.
I remember.
So he was traveling to Brazil 3 weeks out of the month. So between he and I, but primarily him going to Brazil, we had some serious airline miles. So we said, okay, we got the house, we'll pay for that. We'll use our airline miles to fly the artist in, which was a great idea, but it didn't last. It didn't last that
forever.
Those miles go pretty quick. I just kept saying, Dan, can you got to get back down to Brazil. You need to take a trip around the world because I need some miles to bring artists in. But so we just started it, and at the time, that's before the museums were what they were now. So we hosted artists for the various museums. So it was a way to give back in that way, that it wasn't us giving money, but it was taking an expense off. So we paid for their flight so the artists could come. We provide them a place to stay, so they didn't have to rent hotel rooms for them. But the most important part is they were part of a family, so that when they came home from installing, if there was a good day, they had people to celebrate with. If it was a bad day, they had people to try to brainstorm and figure things out. And then it also meant that they could stay around longer, so that they could be more engaged with the community of the institution and locally. So it was like a win-win-win situation all the way around. And then we did the same with Locust Projects. We hosted their artists for the first 6 years, I think. And then we started helping out galleries as well, because, the gallery scene was just getting started here. And, as well as inviting artists who we chose. And then it's just, and then shortly after doing that is when we started the studios, because we were always, I miss our parties. We hosted parties, for artists, and so much fun. Like I miss hosting people, but that's another story. And so we did a bunch of focus groups with artists to say, what local artists, like, what is your greatest need? And of course, as in any city, right, it's studio space. So like, okay, well, we don't have any more money. We don't own any commercial buildings, but we have friends. So I'm just going to start calling all my friends.
Yeah.
To find somebody. And then, a friend, Steve Rhodes, had a building in Little Haiti.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't know. I'll give you 6 months to give it a shot. And I was like, okay, I can do this in 6 months. And we put tape on the floors and off we went, and then it ended up expanding 5 times. And now there's 30 artists there. And hopefully we'll be there for a while. When you go from tech, which, has a lot different financial picture than working with a nonprofit,
Yeah, very different.
It's very different. And I'm someone that, was driven by what I believed success to be. Really having learned from my father and the men in my life, that, you were climbing a ladder, right? You were certain things that you did, based on success, which success really being defined by money, and the things that you have, and not in the ways that I define it now, which is in the relationships that I have, in my ability to give back and to make a difference and to shine a light and to elevate those around me. Like, to me, that is my success. To be able to give my children the time that they deserve, and the energy, and the just whatever, the support in anything that they want. And the same for my husband, to do the same for my husband, because when you're on that hamster wheel, you're just looking forward, and sometimes the blinders on. I have to admit that to myself. But getting out of that mindset and making a conscious decision to walk away from that is not easy. And I'll be honest, I still struggle with it. I do. But I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change anything about, everything, are there things that I regret? Absolutely. But would I change them? No, because I learned something along the way.
That's right.
Changed,
Yeah.
all those things I regret changed me in some way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we made the decision to go all in, and so now it's a nonprofit. It's my job as well as my passion. And it's just been amazing. But it's very, and it's interesting because I always thought that people, felt that people in the community felt a part of Fountainhead, but in this kind of interesting way, when people were allowed to donate and be a part of it, in a financial way, they felt that much more a part of it. And I think I had always felt that way about organizations, but I never thought about it from the other perspective. So it's really very enlightening, and it really filled my heart. And now I feel I think that everybody feels a part of Fountainhead. Everybody. I would love to say everybody, but the people that come to it, and the people that are artists that are a part of it, and I just feel like it feels extremely open, approachable,
Yeah, it's definitely one. Yeah, I think that it is the most approachable and open of all, the arts foundations in Miami. And the arts foundations in Miami are much more approachable than those in other cities. So,
right.
Yeah. And I feel that, to our credit, Miami has a lot of that strength, in like human capital and human currency. And maybe it's like in part like the Southern culture and the fact that we have so many immigrant cultures and so much like, new American blood, well, like myself, so, and like the new immigrants come with a great amount of like hope and faith
Absolutely.
and optimism, right? Because you give up everything for this dream of like freedom, and so you're looking to make connections and you're looking for new groups and communities and families. So like Miami is kind of like a fertile ground for that. The state, I mean, we're not known for it. I don't know why. I don't know why I have such a hard time,
Yeah.
convincing people who don't, live here, that we have
Right.
such a dynamic, like, art world, an intellectual life, because it's just not our, whatever.
Yeah. We're working to change that, right? I mean,
Yeah,
arts
it's
is a
not our
huge part.
reputation, let's say.
I mean, arts is a huge part of changing it. And I say that, I mean, that is we are very lucky for a host of reasons. But when I talk about Miami, people that look in from the outside, they see the top layer. And yes, it is full of glitz and, superficiality and fast cars and monstrous houses and parties and lavish this. But you know what? Like you get just below that surface, and there is so much in the people here, like you said, in their passion and their drive and their entrepreneurial entrepreneurialism.
Mm-hmm.
There's just and also the desire of people to support one another.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to like, okay, you want to do that? We can figure that. Like, I can help you. Like, I know this person. I can tell you this person. And then as soon as you do that, you let me know, and I'm going to post it here. Like people. I mean, and if you're coming at it from the right perspective, right? Because there are also, there have been some shady things happening. We can't like sit there and make it look like all rainbows around here. It's not. But people can sense the other side of things, you know what I mean? But I mean, there's just such a tremendous amount of energy here. The people are incredible, and we also don't have the hierarchical structure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That exists in other cities. Like if you come and you want to do something, you just do it here.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
if you're doing it well and from a good place, and with the right intentions, you know what? People will rally around you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I feel that the old world, the world that like I left behind, and literally every American's ancestor, other than the Native Americans, left behind for some reason. The old world was very much created on like hierarchy and the right way of doing things and the wrong, and like guilds, which is like the old unions, and if you're not born to do something, or if you're not trained properly, you can't do it. All of these rules, so like, the royals would always be royals, and the people with no land would never have land, kind of setup. And within that, also like the role of the genders, and in America we feel in general freer. But I feel that in Miami, it's much more so because it's a younger city and it's a changeable, variable, community. It's not like the Northeast, so kind of like deeply established. Like when I lived in New York, I clearly felt uncomfortable by the competitiveness around me. I felt it, speaking of feeling things, and I saw it in my fellow writers and artists. I saw how they were overwhelmed, how people had to be medicated. I saw that it kind of like went against their nature, that it was overwhelming. It was not at the human level. It was just too much, too big to handle. And when I came to Miami Beach, it just felt so relaxed and liberated and accepting. Like I felt the emotional change, and I feel that that was the main reason that I ended up staying. We say it's the weather. The weather is like, it was nice to spend a couple of winters without, snow. But like to make a decision to raise, my kid here and put her to school here and have her make her friends here, it was more than the weather. It's
Right.
exactly that sense of community that that sense of freedom that I kind of like sacrificed, my language, my religion, my connections, my whatever bullshit name, to get. And I got it here. If I was an artist and I did not, I was an artist because I was making art people wanted to buy. I did not need to like have, 30 certificates. I mean, I do have an art degree, but that doesn't matter. Like it didn't have the same, formal stranglehold
Right.
that I feel other more established areas in the country have inherited from the old world. And I think that that's also part of like the fight that's happening in our political realm right now. And we're not going to talk politics, but it's kind of like there is a right way to do things and a wrong, and there's so much resistance to just like change and evolution and change in the language and change, like it's okay. To me, it's okay. I really don't have these like strict categories. I think that that's what holds us back, because America is like a union that's founded on totally different principles than all the other countries in the world, and those of us who are here prefer that. Like we came for that, for the union.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in your journey, I think like first of all, I want to ask you, like, what do you think is ahead? What's the future for Fountainhead, and maybe in general, if you have a sense of the future for Miami, the culture.
And you know what? I feel like normally I would, months ago I would have had so many answers, like ready to shout and say we're going to do this. I think I'm still, I at this moment, and hopefully the next couple weeks specifically, excuse me, is in the like reassessment and reevaluation, and just talking to a lot of people to make sure that what we're doing is the right thing to be doing. It's what's needed, that we are having the impact that that we want to have, and see if there's any tweaks or things that we want to make going forward. So I think that right now we started a lot of new programming last year. Like with Artists Open. I'm very proud of that initiative. I can't wait to do it again, because we weren't able to do it this year, but to bring, to be able to, bring awareness to all of the artists in Miami, not just those that are in institutions like Fountainhead, like Big House and others, the large complexes, but to be able to elevate all Miami artists, and to be able to bring the community in to all of those artist studios. Like I'm so happy we started this, and I started that, and I want to build upon that. Now we're doing the online version, and and it's open to anybody any artist working in Miami, as you know. And so I want to continue those programs, which are relatively new programs. And then, do more of the financial education, because that is something that's very near and dear to my heart, because I feel like that's understanding finances and budgeting and how to save and how to attain your dreams, what you need to make your dreams come true. Is so important, and something that we don't teach in our schools, regardless of what, regardless of whether you're going into art or medicine, basically. I mean, I talk to doctors who tell me the same thing. You know, we go to med school, we still have no idea how to run a business, yet we're entrepreneurs. My accountant has been donating his time to give workshops. And then I also have someone on our board that has been that is working with any of the artists in residence that need help and have financial questions. So it's a mix of one-on-one workshops, and then I'm talking with some other banks about putting together more of a curriculum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we're going to talk about a few different.
I mean, I think that is, a huge issue. I do think that, especially, right now in America, financial fluency, financial literacy, as well as, I mean, there are other humanistic literacies that people just have no access to, after after like 12 years in school, not to mention like sometimes even the 4 years in college, you still don't get basics, whether it's how to manage your money, like in the case of speaking sex, how to manage your relationships, your relationships with your loved ones, with your partners, with your children, how to speak about things intimate. And shockingly, money is an intimate thing. And people have as much difficulty speaking about money as they have about, speaking about any other kind of intimate things like, sexuality or love or romance or faithfulness, because it feels like that negotiation involves some sort of like, distancing or rejection or objectification. So I feel like, the language of money, I'm sorry?
Or failure.
Or failure, judgment, yeah. So there is definitely, and it's interesting because what that does is that it keeps money in the hands of the very rich, right? It keeps that, the wealth where it has been in that like 0.1%, and it makes it something kind of like unfathomable, or almost like magical for the masses, So incorporating that language in everyday fluency, in everyday speech, I think would be so useful, and including like, knowledge, like what does the stock market do? I see now, right now at this moment, we're hearing that like the stock market is doing well because of all the millennials who are investing like small amounts based pretty much on like their research of the moment, in like apps, like Robinhood or whatever, and they're buying into stocks that otherwise, like those who have had the more traditional sense of the market would have sold. And they're keeping it afloat. So it's like, well, what do they know? How can you get more of that into the culture so people, so people can have that conversation and that facility? I think that's a very worthwhile, like mission. I think it's needed. I feel that, money as well as time, currency and time, how do we measure them and what's our relationship with them? And do we have, agency when it comes to them? What's our agency, when it comes to money or time? And what all of that. It's a big conversation, and it's one that's important to have and to share.
It is, and it's not just it's not just money, right? It's the value of time.
Exactly.
It's understanding, how you're spending your time, where you're spending the money. I mean, a lot of people don't realize how much they're starting to realize now during COVID. I was actually just talking to an artist yesterday, and he's like, I never realized how much money I spent out drinking. He's like, my costs have gone down so significantly because I'm not paying $15 or whatever for a drink out. I'm making a drink at home, but it's understanding those things. And
even like our memberships, like we pay Apple X amount, and we pay like YouTube X amount, and we pay Spotify and Netflix and Hulu, and it's just like Washington Post and the New York Times, and I mean, I know, like looking at my bills, there's so many of them, and I try to cut them out, but then there are more.
I know.
So yeah, but I feel like also the sense of like what is my time worth to me and to the world at large is a big issue, and especially for women, because again, by being told that our most important work has no financial value,
Right.
then it becomes really difficult for us to judge the value of our work as women unless we like copy the male standard, which is how
Right.
you get women like that female boss you mentioned, who is like a she, it's like a she male, the woman who is just out manning men in their like, cliche like toxic masculinity,
Right.
trying to earn respect in the, in the workplace that way. And I understand that. So yeah, it's even more important for women to learn, to obtain some sort of relationship and language with money, resources, sharing resources. Another big thing is like the share economy,
Yeah.
which is huge. And I think also like during COVID, that has become much more. There is much more awareness to it. Like I have felt very strongly since COVID, the land, for example, that I have in Greece and the house and the guest house and the gardens and the vineyard, whatever I have, I already feel like, I don't want this for myself. Like I want it to belong to my sisters. I don't have any need for it myself. You kind of like the sharing has become much more real. Just like
Mhm.
share what you've got, because why are you
Exactly.
holding on to it? Um,
Yeah.
and but I know that there is a growth of like women's groups, the loom groups, where every woman pays an amount, and then when she brings enough women in, she gets like an amount back and gets promoted, and then so it's kind of like a women's version of a pyramid scheme, because it's not
I
a
was gonna say I
pyramid,
haven't thought
because it's
about
like
that one. That
it's
sounds
like
like
more of a circle. That's why it's called a loom, because the person on top ends at the end of the season. So like someone starts it who has been in other looms. So it's all about like the spiral and the circle, and it's kind of like women's resources being used amongst themselves to help them kind of like make a little more money as they bring more people in this evolving spiral. I'm not saying that that's necessarily like the future of the economy, but I find it positive. I'm inspired by the fact that people and especially women, are kind of like finding ways to trust each other and use
yeah.
what they have to kind of grow. But yeah, there is definitely a big gap in that use of of learning and communication.
And like that, I really the sharing component, and that sharing of not only what you have, but sharing of your knowledge, sharing of your resources. Sharing is people. It's something we need to do more and more and more of. And also, and part of that is sharing with and staying in contact with the people that you love, respect, and admire the most, because they're also the people that get pushed aside the quickest when you're on a hamster wheel, and you've got to get things done, and you're so focused, and you have to contribute here, and you have to do this, and you have to do that. You often forget those that you really want to spend your time with. But the sharing is it's interesting, because we had an artist that was she was a curator that was with us from LA during COVID, and she runs a project called Bed and Breakfast, and she bakes. Part of her program is when people in the community come in, she bakes for everyone, and so she actually during COVID turned her baking more into a business, but also a shared economy. So she would bake bread, someone else would exchange for eggs. Somebody else would exchange for vegetables. I think she had done some sort of other project that had nothing to do with food, but there was an exchange that way. Nicole and I started to talk with them, and they exchanged an artwork for writing a story. So there's a lot more, of a shared economy that's really happening.
Yeah, and that's another project that, if one could like, go behind it and give it more, like fire.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done it, for a long time, kind of like trading my art for all kinds of, whatever, I'm very quick to do it, and I'm very happy to do it, because outside of like the formative like studio setting, I don't even know the price. If like someone comes to my home and wants to buy a piece, I just don't feel the same, because it's not like a formal setting. I would much rather exchange it. It just feels better. And but yeah, I think that kind of like organizing that in a way that's more formal. So rather than just trading with one or two people or three people a year, trading with like three people a week, that would be amazing. And also kind of like bypass government altogether in the most like beautiful organic way. Like there is no. There is a lot of exchange and a lot of, giving and taking and supporting without really having to go through like, the regular channels that put us in categories,
It's interesting that you said that, because that's actually something I've been thinking a lot about. And when we did these dinners during, when things started to open up with artists, and talking about how we can facilitate something like that. That is not only within the artist community, but broader as well. So whether it's, dental services, legal services, doctors, like, there's a whole host of things, and maybe it's not just art, but it's time. Like, I've been thinking a lot about that. It's like, how can you facilitate something like that to make it open enough that it's accessible, but controlled in the way that it doesn't get taken advantage of, like by the wrong, it just doesn't get taken advantage of, or it doesn't. It's kept, true to its intent.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it definitely needs. There's always a need for an editorial or a curatorial, eye. Let's say, for sure. An ethical supervision, so everyone feels, safe and can do it without spending too much time researching and preparing. It's like I studied this because, kids my daughter's age would be like, we don't know anything and we don't trust anyone. We don't know what to do. No one has taught us anything about like, our sex lives or our love lives or like boys or pronouns or what do we do? So like doing this every week for me, it has been a labor of love. I have not, of course, in any way monetized it, but it's so enriching, and I find that it's enriching in the way that you say with, in the way that Fountainhead was, everyone who has come on for an hour, during these 2.5 years has kind of joined this growing family, and we all stay connected and we know now each other's narratives much better. And we can kind of call on each other, and we know that, when you call on one another, we will be there because there is that big connection that happened with this conversation. But yeah, to be able to kind of like organize people in an overall way, that would be, I think, pretty revolutionary. I don't know how you do it. Maybe you create an app.
I don't know. There's a thing that's something that I'm thinking about. Like,
well, if anyone can do it, you can do it because you've always been about share since I've known you. So like almost, I think at least 15, 16 years. I think that I've known you. You have been 16 years. Yeah, you have definitely always shared. Come share my food. Come share my home. Come share my friends. Or will come, or let's go whatever, visit, or that's like your instinct, right? So even now with COVID, you were like, go get the fruit and vegetables. They're in my yard. So, and I went, and I loved them. Yeah. So yeah, I definitely it's a big part of your your calling, because it's a way to combine feelings and humanity with like sales and that organization, of the exchange of goods. So,
No,
yeah.
and with that, I was lucky because that was another woman sharing with me. So it was Rosie Gordon Wallace who put everything together and said, you know, will you work with me on this? And I was like, absolutely, like done, you know. So that was her share, like it was her baby that she shared with me to help, you know, and then we spread the
artists, yeah.
and we did it together. So, you know.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. Yeah. Well, I love it. I love the idea. I love the project as much as I'm, you know, a great fan of Fountainhead. This would even grow everything even more, and it could be like, you know, could grow out of Miami and become something even bigger. So, I'm looking forward to like hearing more about your steps moving ahead and about your self growth and evolution. And, you know, I'm always, you know, hopefully I'm always going to be a little part of your life.
Not hopefully,
So,
you absolutely are, and I in yours.
yeah.
My gosh, we've been talking for an hour. I don't have my glasses on, so I can't.
Yeah. Well, I think
I'm sorry. I feel like did we talk about anything you really wanted to talk about? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's beautiful. No, I think we had a beautiful conversation, and you know, you're a great role model, and really, that's what I wanted to share. You know, I just wanted to share who you are, you know, as a woman in the world, and everything we spoke of. I think, you know, kind of like has enriched and inspired our listeners, and you know, they're everywhere in the world, which is, you know, so fulfilling that we have big groups of people listening like on every continent and pretty much in every major city or country in the world. So I don't know how they find us, but it's beautiful and I'm happy, and I hope that they all stay in touch. So thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing, you know, your beautiful truth and your narrative with us, Kathryn. And love you. And everybody out there, love you too. And until next week, keep speaking sex. Death is a visual deceit, like a magic trick.